Oh, dude, oh.
Check out my perfect form.
Check out my perfect form, nigga.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the Super Guy Boy Show, and today we are back with another Dragon Ball topical video on the character of Cell. Now, I'm nearing the end of the Cell saga, and I was already thinking about doing a video on it eventually when I get done with it, because I have a lot to say on the arc itself. However, for today, I'm going to be focusing on the character of Cell, because he is a great example that motivation and backstory isn't enough to make a character complete. Now, don't get me wrong, I like Cell. I think Cell's a pretty decent villain. I like him in his first form. I think he has a very creepy, atmospheric vibe to him. I like Semi-Perfect Cell for his somewhat arrogant attitude and kind of frog-like design. And I do think Perfect Cell has some qualities to it that makes him somewhat kind of cool to watch. However, my biggest problem with Cell is really the fact that he doesn't really feel much of a character. And let me get more into it. Cell is completely defined by his motivation of becoming perfect. It's the first thing we get to know about him, that he wants to absorb the androids to reach his perfect form. We, the audience, understand that. The problem is why? Why does he want to become perfect? What does it say about him? What does being perfect mean to him outside of just being arbitrarily stronger? And I think that's the biggest problem with Cell, is that there's really no depth to his character outside of that motivation. And because Toriyama never went fully in depth into Cell as a character, we never get much out of Cell as a character outside of just that basic motivation. I mean, what traits does Cell really have? I mean, he's arrogant. He's cocky about him being stronger than everyone else. So is Frieza. So is Vegeta. And so is Tien. Without that basic motivation, all Cell is just a blank sheet of all of Dragon Ball's greatest cliches from previous villains. And I mean, we could maybe make an argument that those examples of previous villains are just Toriyama recycling ideas. However, I think Toriyama is one of those types of writers that is great at recycling ideas and packaging them into a newer way. There's more to these characters besides them being cocky and arrogant. Frieza is this genocidal maniac who wants to take over the universe. Vegeta is this egotistical asshole who believes that he's superior than everyone else because of the class he was born into. Tien is a dirty fighter who's struggling of whether or not he wants to become an assassin or takes his skills as a fighter to become a better martial artist for himself. All of these characters have traits that make them stand out and different from one another, and also makes them whole as a character, which is something that I cannot say about Cell, who's just motivation without the traits. He's basically a blank sheet of paper with the sentence, "I want to be perfect," and there's nothing entirely there on the paper besides just that sentence. There's got to be more to him than that. And I think Toriyama knew this, because after Cell reaches his perfect form, all of a sudden his motivation just changes into wanting to fight Goku and then creating the Cell games, which is where we get this forced relationship between Goku and Cell, even though they barely interacted before. And when they do interact, I barely get much out of it. I mean, sure, I get the idea that they like fighting each other and stuff like that. However, so did Tien. So did Vegeta. So did Frieza. What makes Cell much more different than the previous other characters who were excited or tempted to fight Goku? It's a rhetorical question, because there's really nothing to him than that. And I know that someone in the comments is going to put something how, well, once Cell reached this perfect form, his Saiyan traits, or mainly Goku's traits, kind of took over Cell, and that kind of brought in the motivation of wanting to start the Cell games to fight the strongest people. Which, all I have to say is, when did fighting a stronger opponent became a solely Saiyan trait? We've been reading or watching Dragon Ball from the beginning of the series. The excitement of wanting to fight stronger opponents has always been a thing with every martial artist character. Yamcha likes fighting stronger opponents. Tien loves fighting stronger opponents. Krillin loves fighting stronger opponents. This is not a Saiyan trait. It only became a Saiyan trait once Toriyama felt like he needed to make something to make Goku feel like he needed to stand out from the other martial artist characters, which he does to a certain extent. However, making the urge of fighting a stronger opponent a only Saiyan trait kind of devalued a lot of what made these characters so entertaining or different in the first place. What makes them so different from there? Is it because Cell is doing it in a tournament style, determining the fate of the world? Kind of like how Piccolo Jr. did it in the 23rd tournament arc? Again, Cell is not a character. He's just a bunch of cliches from previous Dragon Ball villains, kind of like stirred up into this mixture of a character who lacks the depth that made those characters interesting in the first place. And that is my problem with Cell. He has the motivation, but lacks the substance to make him a complete character. And I think that's my biggest issue with him. And I think that'll do it for this video. I am gonna make that video after I'm done with the Cell Saga to talk about my thoughts on it. So be sure to like and subscribe to be on the lookout for that video. What do you think of this video? What do you think of Cell as a character? What do you think about my opinions? And yeah, hope you had a wonderful time. Hope you had a wonderful day. And yeah, see ya.